Hey everybody, Quad Nine's back, and I'm finally going to get around to that Dredge deck tech I've been telling you about. This is the list I'm running now. It's a little different than the one I played in the PPTQ. Just picked up a couple different cards, trying some stuff out. But anyway, let's start with the mana base. Got 6 fetches. I've seen lists that run more. I've actually got one each of these that are at least red or green. Like I said, basically, if you got at least a Jund color, you know, you're fine. So if you just had 6 or 7 of some combination of this, mostly red. Red's a little bit more important, but you know, being able to get a green source is pretty big, especially in sideboard games. So anyway, so 6 fetches. Got some shots. Got 2 blood crypts, 2 stomping grounds, a steam vents. Sometimes you do have to cast a couple of blue creatures, but it's not super important. You don't really want to have to cast those. Overgrown Tomb, and I've got a couple basics, you know, for Path and whatnot. Hopefully you can counter their Path to Exiles, but they're good to have just in case you don't need to take the damage. 1 Copperline Gorge. Should probably be 2 or 3, but I don't know, just trying out the 1. Got a City of Brass and a Mana Confluence. Could be 2 Mana Confluence. I've actually got 1 of each. Mostly because the difference of this doesn't matter as much. But there is stuff like, you know, Crumble to Dust, Surgical. Don't know why they'd be targeting these, but the difference in how they tap is not as big as the option of them possibly removing both of them. So anyway, and 2 Datmore Salvage, which are dredgers, which are very big because you can get your landfall trigger when you need it, and able to get a land out of the graveyard without using another spell. It's pretty good. So I believe is it 20 lands I'm up to? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, 20 lands. So I was running 19 for a while, but with the addition of another spell we'll go over in a second, 20 seems to be the right number. Conflagrate. I only run 1 in the main. You can put more in the sideboard. Sometimes I wish I had more main deck, but there's so many other sweet spells. As long as you have 1, you're probably okay. A lot of times you cast it the first time for 0. Just get it in your graveyard if you have it in your opener, and then flashing it back when you get the big value for discarding like 5 cards or 4 or 5 cards and just killing a big threat or going to their face and just putting all your dredgers in the yard. The turn 1 plays you really want are Faithless Looting or Shriekhorn. Running 3 Shriekhorn for Faithless Looting. They just put cards in the yard, and this has separate triggers. If you already have a dredger in, you can dredge it once, hit another dredger off the first draw, and then draw that one to dredge again, and then you discard 2 dredgers again. So pretty simple. Shriekhorn, it does a lot more work than you think, and it's also a Gargadon fodder later in the game. This is some of the additions, hence them not being full yet because just haven't picked them up. But Life to Loam, some lists run as many as 4. I like 1 or 2. I'm just going to run the 1 for right now, but being able to get your lands back and still dredging 3, pretty good. Make sure you can actually cast your spells, whether they be dredge enablers or a kill spell or whatever. But this is pretty good. Be able to get back lands that just you don't want in your yard, I guess. So really like that card. Collective Brutality is sweet. Being able to free discard just for 2 mana, you get to do usually all 3 things. The life gain's good against some decks, and it also helps because you're painful mana base. Kill a small creature and get that Path or Angry Gods out of their hand on turn 2. So really good. I've cut down to 2 bridges. I really do like this card. I like the explosiveness and being able to make like, you know, Suspend Gargadon, Dredge, put a couple of Bloodghast in the yard, and Narcomoeba. And if you ever hit a couple of bridges, then you get to sack them and then do landfall, and then just all of a sudden you've got like 12 power zombies on turn 3 or 4. It just doesn't matter because 12 power in a couple turns usually is good enough. On to the actual creatures. Got Insolent and Innate. It's one of the big additions to the deck from the new block, Shadows block, and it really does enable the deck. Just 1 mana. Usually on their turn, on their second main, you'll discard a card, sack it, and then draw a card. You discard your biggest dredger, sack this, and it's part of the, like, they can't interact with that really. And then you get to draw that dredger and dredge, 4, 5, 6, whatever. And it usually gets you started for your next draw step. So, and sometimes they just attack for a few, and that's okay. Gargadon, I've got it in the one spot because you always suspend it. I don't think anybody's ever cast this in most decks that run it. It's good because it just gives you something to do to keep your stuff from being exiled. Like, say they cast Anger of the Gods, you sack all your creatures to Gargadon. Say they cast Path, same thing. Just doesn't matter. Whatever they're trying to do, just get value of it. Make sure it goes back to your yard. And, occasionally they tap out and you look down and you count your stuff that you actually need to play and stuff you don't. And you're like, sack these things, cast Gargadon. It comes in with haste and just whack them for 9. It's just good stuff. Really hard to deal with. Golgari Thug, just the one of, it has a very cute interaction with Narcomoeba. If you ever get Golgari Thug on the battlefield, and say you can sack it to Gargadon or chump block or whatever, and you put a Narcomoeba already in your yard on top of your library to trigger your other things. Speaking of that, for Narcomoeba, card just goes into play and brings along any prized amalgams come on just after, so that's pretty sweet. Bloodghast, the same thing. Been able to trigger these with landfall, possibly sack it to get more value, whatever. It still attacks for 2 and can't have haste all the time. If you just stack a fetch land on their instep, it has pseudo haste. Bringing back prized amalgams is a big bonus. Turn 3, a lot of times you'll have a Narcomoeba, a Bloodghast, and 2 amalgams. It doesn't sound like much, but I mean it's 9 power attacking on turn 2 or 3, so not the worst. And they're very resilient early in the game because they're usually bigger than whatever else is out there. Stinkweed Imp, having the kind of death touch, but not really death touch. It's a Dredge 5. It's a flyer. You do hard cast these sometimes just to deal with stuff like Inkmoth Nexus. Hopefully they don't have trample, or just other pesky flyers, or just whatever their big creature is beating you down. You can just cast this and block, and then it dies. So. And the Dredge 5 is the second biggest in the deck. Haunted Dead, been very happy with this card. They can't counter this ability. They can remove it from the graveyard at instant speed, I guess. But unless they have graveyard removal, being able to get this back at instant speed, which does trigger your amalgam, gives you a flying blocker, just 2 bodies, and you get to discard as well, which is, you can discard 2 amalgams and then it comes back and both amalgams see it. It's just, there's a lot of little lines you can do with this deck to get value. But yeah, this card just keeps coming pretty much. And it's 3 power over 2 bodies, and like I said, usually bringing an amalgam along with it. Grave Troll, of course, being unbanned. Yeah, I know I've only got one full. Sad. But being unbanned, it wasn't a thing for a while, but then they printed the 2 cards from Shadows and Neonate and Amalgam, and it just really gives you something good to hit off your dredges. You just really want to be able to, you hit those amalgams and you get them back in play, and you can occasionally cast this guy. It happens. I haven't done it in a long time, but once you've got a big yard and you cast this guy or get him into play, then he's huge, and he has 1 regenerate. Take a counter off and regenerate him. So anyway, that's the deck. I'm also going to go over some sideboard options. I think there's like 12 individual cards. You're going to have some number of these in your board. There's probably some other stuff I'm forgetting, but this is what I go with. Rally the Peasants. I used to play this main deck. It's very good. You're usually casting the flashback for red. The white you can get off of your Mana Confluence or City of Brass, or I've played some Gemstone Mines before. They'll work too. But usually just casting it for red, instant speed, kill your opponent with a couple creatures. Makes Narcomoeba a much bigger threat when you have this in the yard. Pithing Needle, obviously good for planeswalkers or man lands, just stuff like that. Or even something like, what's a bad one? Kalidas' sack ability, that's big. Which that card's really important to beat right now. So you need at least 2 or 3 ways to kill him post board. Conflagrate's one, but yeah, you really want to be able to just take him out. That way you can get your game on, because otherwise you're not getting stuff out of the graveyard that much. Anything that dies or you sack to Gargadon just goes away, so not good. Lightning Axe, some number of these, 2, 3, 4 even. The discard outlet's good. Killing a big creature's good, 1 mana. Ancient Grudge, very big against the artifact decks, obviously. It does get some crossover with like Nature's Claim, which I'll get to in a second. But yeah, this is always good. Flashing it back's good. Gnaw of the Bone. This in the aggro matchups, this single-handedly can win you the game. You can cast this, gain like 20 life on turn 3, and from there, it's very hard to lose. Just make sure they don't have, is it a Tarkus Command, Skull Crack, something like that, something that keeps you from gaining life. But yeah, just wait till you can either cast it from your hand or flash it back, get 12 to 20 life. Usually gets you out of the burn range or the aggro range. Nature's Claim, like I said, very big post board. Getting rid of stuff like Rest in Peace, Graft Digger's Cage, whatever, ley lines of any kind, spell skites, whatever. Just get rid of it. The 4 life gain usually doesn't matter. When you attack for lethal, it's usually a ton of damage. So, surgical, yeah, just that you get in against Dredge, or not Dredge decks, other Dredge decks, yes. Also like Delve decks, like Grixis Control. They're thought scouring themselves, and you just get the key card out of their library, or they cast their 1 hate card that they've got a couple of in the deck. You just surgically extract all of them. Leyline is very big against other Dredge decks, any kind of flashback deck like that, so definitely important. Tormod's Crypt, also more graveyard hate that doesn't interrupt your plan. Most people run Relic, but that gets rid of both graveyards. Your deck wants to run Tormod's Crypt because it target player's yard and it's 0 mana, instant speed, no mana to activate. These things are good. Dark Blast could have one of these main deck if you don't have other dredgers. This does kill a lot of creatures in the format. Noble Hierarch, Birds, Bob, Snapcaster, whatever, and it is instant, and it does have Dredge 3 on it, so repeatable removal. Slaughter Games, this one's interesting because a lot of times you don't have time to get that much mana, but if you're getting something like, say, Jeskai Control, it's a very important card because you usually will be able to get up to 4 mana, especially if you're hitting your Life from Loams, hitting your land drops before they can ultimate Nahiri. This way you can get their Emrakul out of the game, or it's important against Tron, which actually isn't that bad a matchup. A lot of the Tron decks have gone away from like main deck Pyroclasm. They're just going, blue or green, whatever. So, yeah, it's kind of good. Fact, it can't be countered, and you can name any non-land card, and usually you can, by the time you board the thing, you know what you need to name. So, and lastly, Abrupt Decay, obviously just good. Does get rid of the, like I said, Graft Digger's Cage, Rest in Peace, troublesome creatures except for Cletus. So yeah. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the deck tech. Sorry I kind of ramble on about some of the cards. I do really like this deck. It's one of the ones I'm going to keep in my arsenal, really. Usually I'm trying to get like 4 or 5 different modern decks built so I can both practice with other people and just have decks to play with. But like I said, this one's fun. It's getting hated out a little bit more, but as you can see, you can bring the hate as well and counter theirs. But if you have any questions or comments about the deck, be sure to leave them below, and thanks for watching.